Okay, there we go, got it. Let me do this again. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا يا أرحم الراحمين. So a quick note before we start, inshallah, I think we might have 2 more lessons. The last lesson will include a PowerPoint presentation about Islamic history that I had done in our last class, which is not related to the 40 hadith, but it gives you a general idea about Islamic history. It has 6 timelines, if I remember them. One is about political geography and Khilafah. Second one is about Arabic. One is about scientists. One is about Hadith, and one about mysticism, and something like that. And one about fiqh. So that's 6. And 2 weeks ago, we said that we wanted to do a double header, 2 classes in one. But after Salat al-Maghrib, the majority of the people was too late for them, so they left, and we did not end up doing a second session. So for those who thought we did, well, we did not. So today, inshallah, we'll take 2 hadiths, 38 and 39. They are in text, not long, especially the second one is only 1 sentence. But in the book from Sheikh Jamaluddin Zarabuzo, it went like 71 pages. It's probably one of the second longest hadith that he commented on. So there's a little bit of information here in this hadith and the next one. So that's why 2 hadiths only will take up today's lesson. And inshallah, next time we'll go 3 or 2 and so on. So maybe 2 sessions maximum will be done, inshallah. So this first hadith, عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه. If you notice here in the main page, it says here, Hadith Qudsi. Remember, this is Hadith Qudsi, and starts with the Prophet ﷺ saying, إن الله تعالى قال. That's why it's Hadith Qudsi. So عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إن الله قال من عادى لي وليا فقد آذنته بالحرب وما تقرب إلي عبدي بشيء أحب إلي مما افترضته عليه ولا يزال عبدي يتقرب إلي بالنوافل حتى أحبه فإذا أحببته كنت سمعه الذي يسمع به وبصره الذي يبصر به ويده التي يبطش بها ورجله التي يمشي بها ولئن سألني لأعطينه ولئن استعاذني وفي رواية استعاذ بي لأعيذنه. هذا الحديث رواه البخاري، هو الوحيد الذي روى هذا الحديث. كتب الستة لم يرويه منها سوى البخاري. So on the authority of Abu Hurairah, who said, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Allah the Almighty has said, so this is Hadith Qudsi, whoever has mutual animosity with a friend or wali of mine, Allah will declare one upon him. My servant does not draw near to me with anything more beloved to me than the religious duties that I have imposed upon him. What this means in a nutshell, just so that the meaning remains clear, there's a split between the religious duties. Some of them are obligatory and the other ones are voluntary. So in this hadith, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the obligations, the duties, are more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And my servant continues to draw near to me with nawafil, voluntary, supererogatory works and deeds, such that I love him. So he builds a base with a fard, obligation, wajib, and then on top of it, he builds more deeds with nawafil. And when I love him, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves one of his servants, I am as if his hearing with which he hears, his seeing with which he sees, his hand with which he strikes, and his leg with which he walks. Were he to ask of me, I would surely give him. Were he to ask me for help or refuge, I would surely grant it to him. This hadith is recorded by Bukhari. There's a continuation of this hadith that Imam Nawawi did not include in here. This is one of the hadiths that, despite being in Sahih al-Bukhari, some of the scholars had voiced their concern about some of its texts and verses in here. I'm not going to go into this, but they said that this hadith is unlike in its wording to many other hadith, or the typical way that the Prophet ﷺ or the hadith Qudsi comes. And they said, had this hadith been outside the Bukhari, they probably would have graded differently. But because it's the Bukhari who narrated it, they left it untouched. We can maybe later on talk about it a little bit more. So this hadith can be misinterpreted in a very dangerous way. Such misinterpretations can actually lead to blasphemy, because when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I would be his vision, I would be his hand, and so on, it needs to be understood metaphorically. And if somebody wants to understand it superficially and textually, then they will fall into the incarnation kind of belief, which is obviously not Islamic and heretical, to be honest. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares war upon the one who opposes his devoted servants, or his awliya. Awliya is a term that is found very frequent in the Quran, and this is the plural form of it. Awliya, singular, is wali. So the word awliya is a plural form from wali and has been translated as friend. But it's not an accurate, like they have to pick a word, they picked friend, but actually it has so many different words, the term wali, for lack of better term. There are very many other commonly used meanings of wali. A few of them were used in the Quran. For example, when a father is marrying his daughter, he is her wali. So it's exactly the same word. And then there's in the Quran, Allahu waliyul ladhina amanu. Allah is the wali of those who believe. What does wali there mean? And then it says, Ala inna awliya Allahi la khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. So the walis of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shall never fear. So it has very many different meanings, and the context will decide which meaning it is. But we can break it down to two major categories of meaning. For this hadith, the selected meaning is one of two possible ones. The first meaning points to selected, remarkable, pious Muslims that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has elevated to this rank. It's like cherry-picked number of people who are pious, salihin, awliya. Their Islamic character, obedience, and piety is head above shoulder of everybody else. Think about Sayyidina al-Khadr in Surah Al-Kahf. So this will make the awliya as like some people that we would like to emulate, and they are like people that we consider them to be, some exemplary behavior. So this hadith, now if we think of it, it could mean that. So whoever shows enmity and hatred towards those people, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will declare war on him. But we can also interpret the word wali in a different way, and also take the whole hadith in a different direction. So the second possible meaning is more encompassing and less stringent. According to this meaning, all observant Muslims are awliya, which is the Arabic plural of wali. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allahu waliyul ladhina amanu, yukhrijuhum min al-dhulumati ila an-nur. So all of those who believed are awliya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one more than the other, or yes, one more than the other, but all have this general quality of being awliya. And hence the hadith was said, anyone who is, showing hatred and animosity toward the Muslims in general because of their iman, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be considering him to be opposing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. So the following Quran verse can accommodate both meanings. Ala inna awliya Allahi la khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun alladhina amanu wa kanu yattaqun. So here we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, verily the friends or awliya of Allah are those on whom fear comes not, nor do they grieve. Those are who believe and keep their duty to Allah. So the translation, well, keeps their duty to Allah is here, وَكَانُوا يَتَّقُونَ. We all know what taqwa is, and if you want to consider this is the meaning of it. So when you think of this ayah, أَلَا إِنَّ أَوْلِيَاءَ اللَّهِ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. So the awliya don't fear, and they shall not be sad. And those are the ones who are believers and have taqwa and piety. Is this every Muslim, handful of Muslim, majority of Muslim, who are encompassed in this ayah? Once you get the answer to that, then you'll be able to apply the hadith we are discussing today to that chosen group. All right. Any questions so far? Are we good? Clear? Inshallah. Okay. So if we have someone who is considered a wali, regardless whether it's the first interpretation or the second interpretation, and there was some hatred or some litigation argument between him and another person, a Muslim or non-Muslim, is it automatically considered that that second person is doomed? No. Not all enmities towards a wali trigger this hadith. Sometimes there is litigation over worldly matters where fault is unclear. Maybe the wali is not infallible. He might have done some mistake and he might be at fault towards another person and he does not know. And then the other person challenges him, the wali refuses to back off, and then they go to court. This is not the sort of enmity that this hadith is talking about. So enmity arising from such situation is exempt from being encompassed by this hadith. So that hadith is someone who is showing hatred and enmity and opposition towards a wali because of his religion, because of his Islamic observance. What is left is enmity towards the wali because of his observance, religion, and following the sunnah and prophetic example. That's the one who is intended by the war waged against him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This interpretation ties with Hadith 34 and the duty to change evil by hand, tongue, and heart. Those who do not want their evil to be opposed, changed, and removed are an example of those warned by this hadith. Remember when we said the hadith, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadihi." If some of you, one of you sees evil, then they have to change it by their hand. If they cannot, then by their tongue, and if they cannot, by their heart. So if this wali sees something wrong and evil, and he wants to change it, and now there's an opposition between him or them, awliya, against those people who are promoting this evil, who don't want that evil to be removed or changed. Now that hadith applies in here because those walis have the obligation, like every Muslim, if they see evil, that they have to change it. And because they are awliya, they have higher standards, they are more courageous in doing these things, and they actually go forward. However, the evildoers oppose them and face them and show their enmity towards what the awliya is doing. Our hadith number 38 will apply in this situation. And this concept is not strange. It's not something that came from Hadith al-Bukhari, and we said that maybe some scholars have a question mark about some wording in this hadith where then this whole concept is suspicious. No, this concept is centered in the Quran. And Allah yudafi an alladhina amanu. It's very simple. It's already there in the Quran. The concept that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declares war on those opposing his awliya can also be deduced from this verse. Allah defends those who believe. The hadith then shines the spotlight on an important concept. Fulfilling the fard obligatory duties should always be given priority over non-obligatory. It is, which means the fard is more beloved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have always, by learning and understanding fiqh, we have always to be with the capacity to see different colors of different ta'at and different deeds that we do. We shouldn't all have like a monochromic vision. Some things are more important than others. Some things are obligatory. The other ones are voluntary and nafil. So we cannot treat them all the same. We always have to put forward the things that are obligation. For example, not obligation is not always praying the 5 times salah or making fasting. This is given. But sometimes let's say if someone has a family, earning a living and supporting his family is fard. If he spends his time doing something else and falling behind on providing essentials for his family, then he's falling back on the fard for the sake of something else that is, sunnah or mandub or liked, but that comes on secondary level versus the fard. So we have always to recognize what the fards in our life are and then give them priority because they are more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's what the awliya do. They understand exactly that fard is not only praying the 5 times and then praying 100 rak'at after that. It's praying the 5 times and then having a 360 kind of vision, seeing what is required in this society, in this community, in their families, in their neighborhood, and the city, and putting their time and effort towards that in order to fulfill most of the fards that are required. The hadith continues, my servant does not draw near to me with anything more loved by me than the religious duties I have imposed on him. That's what we said. So obligatory duties extend beyond the 5 daily prayers and fasting. They can include striving for sincerity. This is part of fard in all your actions, mentoring and supporting your family, excelling at your job, participating in communal obligation, fard kifaya, learning the essentials of your iman, and teaching it if no one else is available to do so. These are just few different eclectic examples, and you can extrapolate from here. All of these are fard. Second, the hadith continues, my servant does not draw near to me with anything more love than, okay, it's the same one. Why do I still have it here? Okay, I don't know why it duplicated. There's here one more item. The obligatory duty also includes focusing your efforts on eliminating sinful behaviors from our practice. So the obligation is not always something to do, but it's something that to shed and to drop off and to stop. For example, ill talk of others, wasting time is fard to stop wasting time and wasting money, swearing, smoking, whatever. Anything that is haram, part of the fard is actually to put an effort trying to put an end to it. Now is the second level. My servant continues to draw near to me, which means he's already near Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala figuratively by doing the fard, but he's getting even closer to the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with voluntary deeds, so that I shall love him. So similar to what we said in the obligatory part, it also is part of voluntary deeds to stay away from disliked acts, the other time from haram. But now if there's something makruh, and so Fuqah says this thing is makruh, then if you stay away from it, it's as if you're doing sunnah. And this will also put a person inside this part of the hadith. So similar to what we said in the obligatory part, that you also have to refrain from doing sinful and haram stuff, it's also a part of voluntary deeds to stay away from disliked act. With proper intention, if somebody has a proper intention why he is abstaining from doing something that is disliked, this is a rewardable act. Review the 5 classes of Islamic ruling. Remember, there's fard, sunnah, permissible, disliked and prohibited, or fard, sunnah, mubah, makruh, haram. This makruh in here, we said if people do it, then there's no sin. But if they don't do it, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will be rewardable. The hadith continues, when I love him, Allah says, then I'm his hearing with which he hears, metaphorically. Allah is also his seeing or vision with which he sees, his hand with which he strikes, and his foot with which he walks. What does that all mean? And this is part of probably the text of this hadith that some scholars had issues, plus the part that's not mentioned in the Nawawi. So incarnation is definitely not intended. one of the plausible correct meanings can be that the person's whole being becomes busy with what is related to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He never listens, looks, does, or walks unless it pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's as if he dedicated his vision, his hearing, his hand, his foot, only for doing deeds and what pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another meaning is possible. However, scholars agree that these terms are allegorical and their apparent incarnation, anthropomorphism, meaning anthropomorphism, it means they believe that the God has the same human body and corpse and similarity between humans and creatures with God. It's like the Greek used to believe that the gods looks like, I don't know, a horse with half man, half horse. This is all tajsim, giving a body to God. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is exalted above that because all of those are created and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not similar to any of his creations. All of those incarnation meanings are not intended or even possible. So the hadith then continues that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, were he to ask something of me, I would surely give it to him. Were he to ask me for refuge, I would surely grant it to him. Note that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is all capable of providing these needs. However, supplication is the unmentioned catalyst. It's not like it just happens on its own. This is up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But look here, it says, were he to ask of me. So there was something, there was a catalyst from the servant towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with proper intention and humility. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will respond to him, inshallah. And with that, the first hadith is concluded. Do we have any questions?
So about like makruh. Makruh is halal, but you should try to stay away from it.
Let's stay technical. Halal is the middle choice, or let's say the middle class. There's 5 classes. Okay. Halal and mubah are in the middle, number 3. So we have farad, sunnah, halal or mubah are here. Makruh is makruh, so we cannot say the makruh is the halal, because halal is whether you wear green or blue. That's halal or mubah. They're all identical. That makes no difference whether you wear this or that, you sit here or sit that, doesn't matter. Makruh is something that if you did it, there's no sin, but it's better you don't do it. And if you don't do it with the proper intention, you get rewarded. But whether you sit here or there, wear green or blue, you don't get any reward. Even with intention, it has no reward because there's no difference between green and blue. So these are the classes of mubah. And there's one poem that's famous, it's called Zubad by Ibn Ruslan. I'm just saying that because it records and you can always go back to it. He said, فاعل المكروه لم يعذب لكن إن يكف لامتثال يثاب. فاعل المكروه, the person who commits makruh, لم يعذب, he's not going to be punished. لكن, however, إن يكف, if he abstains, لامتثال, it means with intention, يثاب, he gets reward, ثواب. Right? Okay, so that's how it is. Any other questions or? Inshallah. Great, we're pretty close on time. Let's go to the next hadith. No, what is that? I don't want you. What is this? What is this? How we do this? What is 50? There we go. 59. أنت آدم؟ محمد. There's no way. Muhammad. I need to take your dad's phone before we leave, inshallah. So this hadith It's not Qudsi. I forgot to delete this one here. So this is not Hadith Qudsi. عن ابن عباس رضي الله تعالى عنهما أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن الله تجاوز لي عن أمتي الخطأ والنسيان وما استكرهوا عليه. هذا حديث حسن رواه ابن ماجه والبيهقي وغيرهما. So Bukhari, Muslim, Nasa'i, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi did not narrate it. From the 6 books, only Ibn Majah is the one who narrated it. And Bayhaqi is like almost 180 years after Ibn Majah narrated it as well. So it's a very short hadith. On the authority of Ibn Abbas, radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, anna Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, on my behalf, Allah has pardoned for my nation what is done mistakenly out of forgetfulness or under duress. This is a hadith Hasan recorded by Ibn Majah, Al-Bayhaqi, and others. So we're tackling here 3 things. That there's forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for things that have been done in error, mistaken, or out of forgetfulness, or under coercion. So we'll talk a little bit about each one of those 3. The fuqaha love this hadith because it helps them work with fuqaha in a very rich manner. So this, first of all, demonstrates the great mercy and compassion, justice and wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He does not hold people responsible for it in case they committed something under one of those 3 categories. Mistakes, forgetfulness, and coercion are unavoidable aspects of human nature, except for the infallible ones, such as the prophets and messengers. So this is going to happen. There's no way but to happen. And what are their rulings is something that we will look at now. So the sin of the act is pardoned and not the worldly consequences of the act. So when we look at this hadith, it's not like, okay, somebody did something by error. Okay, we're all good. We're cool. Everybody go home, No, if you did damage to something, then you're responsible for it, but you're not at sin. You're not at hereafter liability, but you still have to pay retribution, but you're not going to be penalized because of it. And that's what hadith actually mean. And you might find it strange enough. If you read the commentaries, some of the scholars even went beyond it and say, no, even the worldly things are forgiven, but the majority and the conclusion and the more obvious opinion is that the sin only is what pardoned, but the worldly consequences are actually will require to be addressed.
So the mistakes being referenced in this hadith, are they like religious mistakes or any kind of mistake?
We'll have some examples. Hopefully this will answer your question. So this could be viewed as the answer to the believer's dua at the end of Surah Al-Baqarah, رَبَّنَا لَا تُؤَاخِذْنَا إِن نَسِينَا وَأَخْطَأْنَا, isn't it? So we make dua, Allah, if we made something out of nisyan, forgetfulness, or made a mistake because it's an error, please don't hold us liable for it. Okay, we repent and we confess our mistake, but this is by forgetfulness. It's not by an intention to make a sin and to cross Allah's halal and haram. Oh Lord, do not punish us if we forget or make a mistake. An example would be if someone forgot to pray and remembered after the time has passed, someone forgot to pray. Salat al-Dhuhr, he was busy and did not remember that he has not prayed Dhuhr yet, and remembered after Azan al-Asr. So in here, there's no moral or hereafter sin or punishment, but he still needs to make up the prayer. We cannot just say, oh, he missed Salat al-Dhuhr because he forgot, and or forgetfulness are non-liable, then he doesn't need to pray anymore. No, but because it was an honest mistake, by forgetting, you still have to pray it, but you shall not be held punishable because of that. This is one example. In cases of coercion, my apologies, I sometimes, the way that I was collecting information and making the summary, was reading in multiple sources, and I'm supposed to speak only about mistakes and about only forgetfulness and only about coercion, but they are going to be mixed up with each other, so bear with me. you'll be able to put them all in place. So in cases of coercion, the subsequent action is generally considered null and void unless it's conducted justly. So what it means in here, if someone, a bad doer, evil guy, pulled up a stick or a bat and threatened another person to do something, that coerced person, the victim, whatever he does, is not liable because he's being forced. We'll talk a little bit more about it. And it is the fault of the guy with the gun or the bat. So what we're saying here is that in case of coercion, the subsequent action is generally considered null and void. So if the one who is being coerced, the victim, was asked to divorce his wife, sell his land, give up his car, acknowledge something that is not true, whatever he says, even like utter a word of kufr, all of these things are null and void and have no value because he was under coercion. But sometimes coercion works unless it is conducted justly and through proper legal channels. For example, if someone is compelled to sell a piece of land to pay off his debts against their will, a judge can enforce this action. So this is considered to be justified coercion and does not fall under the purview of this hadith. So someone is dragging, he doesn't want to pay his debt, and then the people who want money from him went to the judge, said like, this guy is never going to pay us. Every time says next month, next 2 months, and he never pays up. And then eventually they drag him to the court, make a case, the judge rules against this person and forces him. He tells him, listen, you have a piece of land, it's worth $10,000, we're going to sell it for $10,000, and we're going to give those people their money. And he says, no, I don't want to sell it. He says, you know, we're going to force you to sell it, whether you want or not. So this is type of coercion that is acceptable. The judge cannot go and sell it for $5,000. No, if he sells it for what is fair market, then yes, and then this coercion is justified.
What if it's through a judge and like a legal channel, but it's corrupt and it's like it's for
La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. What shall we do?
like
Then the people who are using a corrupt court in order to achieve that target are at fault at that point.
Coercion or
well, it is still coercion, but because it is a corrupt court, in the akhirah it didn't work, but in the worldly affairs, the paperwork has actually forced this guy to give up his land, and at this point in time, for example, the land is no longer there. But yeah, unfortunately, this does happen, but not as much. Sometimes, not only the mistakes are forgiven, but also are rewarded in some way. Can you think of a way where someone makes a mistake, but it really was beneficial? Yeah, we all know that. No, we'll get to it, but here's the hadith. إذا حكم الحاكم فاجتهد ثم أصاب فله أجران وإذا حكم فاجتهد ثم أخطأ فله أجر. And in English, if a judge or a ruler makes a decision by exerting or making ijtihad, did his best, collected all the pertinent information, and then made a ruling, and he correctly judged the case, then he will receive double reward. But if you put all that effort and the ruling he made was a wrong one, he gets one reward. So even though he made a mistake, he still gets a reward for it in here. And he is not liable. This is Rawahu al-Bukhari and Muslim. This hadith states that even if the person is incorrect, he still may be rewarded for the effort that he made, not to speak of being held sinless for his mistake. So he's not only sinless, but he's also rewarded. And there's different type of reward. On the topic of making a mistake, we had said before that the ignorance is not an excuse. Hence, this hadith does not apply to errors made by someone who did not put an effort. Not all. Yes, Akhi.
So the thing before I love the ruler makes the judge collect all the evidence in the 2 hours and 1 hour. Would that apply to the scholar making like a fatwa?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's why it's required. It's haram for someone who does not have the qualification to make fatwa to say halal or haram. They can quote other one, but they cannot make ijtihad. Ijtihad needs its own tools, requires its own qualification. And even if they gave an opinion and they are not qualified, they are at sin. Remember the hadith where man qala fil Qur'ani bi ra'yihi faqad akhta'a wa an asab. Whoever says in tafsir al-Quran and deducing ahkam from the Quran based on his opinion without having proper knowledge, even if his answer is correct, he has committed haram because he has crossed into an area that he's not qualified for it, right? So based on this point as well, the person, if they made a mistake and they have never attempted to even put any effort or homework to study that subject that they made a mistake in it, that mistake is not going to be forgiven. This mistake of this hadith where people are forgiven if they've already done their homework on it. But if someone is just like going through life and with no care at all, with no concern at all, and then he makes mistakes, no, his ignorance is going to be costing him liability. The mistakes he's making do not fall in this hadith in here. Remember, for example, the person who forgot to pray Salat al-Dhuhr, as we said in here, like everybody knows. But if someone did not even care to know that he has to pray Salat al-Dhuhr and he did not pray it, then that he is definitely liable. So we just have to pay attention that people need to have done their homework in order that their mistakes and errors are forgiven. I think I'm going to just put on the light a little bit. It's becoming a little too dark. Here, hold on a second. Is that okay? Yeah, this concept about ignorance is not an excuse is very important and crucial in so many things. Keep it in your mind, write it down, think about it all the time. Ignorance is not an excuse. A person needs to do his homework, her homework, and then after that, inshallah, if somebody makes a mistake, it will be a different conclusion. So example for someone who is financially capable, gave his zakat money to his poor or rich parents. Is that okay? You're financially capable. You have a good job. And let's say your father, inshallah, that's not the case, and he's financially destitute. He's broke completely, and you have your own zakat that you need to pay. And you said, okay, my dad is in difficulty. I'm going to give my dad my zakat. Is that okay? Are you fine now? You've already paid your own zakat. You're good? No. Why? Because in Islam, parents are under the obligation. The kids have the obligations to support their parents financially if they are in difficulty. So me and you, and we have, if our parents need financial support, we give them from the core of our money, not from our zakat money. So if I gave them my zakat money, this is wrong. They don't take zakat money, they take from the core money. If I gave them zakat money, that doesn't count as zakat. I still have to get other monies and give it to the proper zakat dispensing groups that had been decided in fiqh. So the fact that this person does not know this fact is due to his ignorance, and the mistake in here is not forgiven. Do you understand the picture? Go.
So what if your parents were in the category of people who are eligible for zakat?
Yeah.
So can you give them that zakat and still give them the more that they need?
No, because your zakat does not count as zakat when you give them to your parents. Okay, so you have $2,000 you have to pay as zakat. You give them to your parents and you give them 5 on top. The poor people who actually deserve your $2,000 then get a dime. You still have to get $2,000 and give it to somebody else other than your parents. And if you didn't know that, that's on you. You cannot claim this is a mistake, I'm going to be forgiven. So I'm saying here, you need to know these things. And since you are financially capable, then it's fard on you to understand how zakat works. If you don't have any saving, you don't need to know anything about the book of zakat. Mashi? You don't need to know nothing. Maybe only zakat al-fitr. But how zakat of mal comes out, if you don't have any bank account or any saving, that's not your part. Once you start working and you have some saving, you must learn how zakat works. And you would learn that I cannot give zakat to somebody I'm obliged to go and support. Okay? On the topic of forgetfulness, we have the common case of eating while fasting. من نسي وهو صائم فأكل أو شرب فليتم صومه فإنما أطعمه الله وسقاه. Not only he's not liable, but he got fed. He got free calories. Whoever forgets and eats or drinks while he is fasting should complete his fast, for it was only Allah who fed him or gave him drink. رواه البخاري ومسلم. When is forgetfulness not an excuse? If a person is himself the cause of his own forgetfulness or of an act that he could have avoided, then he is not excused. This goes in parallel what we said about ignorance. It's a different kind, but same kind of philosophy. A person who sees something najasi, impure on his clothing, he sees it, but he procrastinates, takes his time in removing it to the point that he forgot that it's there. If he later on prays with that same impurity on his clothing, he will not be excused as it was due to his own lack of action. Hence, he will be required to make up all the prayers upon recalling that he did not remove his najasa. So the fact that he procrastinated, he knew, and then he forgot, he should have been more careful and taken attention to that and done it. Just the fact that he forgot does not alleviate the issue. 1, 2.
So if the person, so they saw the najasa on their clothes and they're like, okay, I'll just do it later, and they forgot about it. What if they actually forgot about it? Like they didn't realize it was there, but they saw it after they prayed?
No, that's a different situation. You will find the scholars are different regarding this. So based on what madhab you follow, then your answer will be different, right? But if you knew, this is a different situation. Your case is that they did not know while they were praying that the najasa was there. They only found out afterwards. Some scholars would say if it's within still the same time, Zuhr has not finished, then you have to go and repeat the salah. If Zuhr has already, time is ended and now you're already in Asr, you don't have to do it anymore. So there are different opinions regarding this and depending on the mazahib. But in this situation, I knew there was a najasa and said, oh, I'll do it later on. I'll do it later on. And it was not prompt. I procrastinated. When time came, I already forgot about it. I'm not excused. No, I mean, you're really twins, huh? Or the one who forgets what he had memorized of the Quran while he had the ability to study it over and over again. This is dangerous. People they memorize Surah Yasin. 3 months later, they know half of it. 6 months later, they know 2 pages, and so on. So could they have continued reviewing it and memorizing it? Yeah. So this forgetfulness of the Quran is not something that is forgiven. There's a warning from the Prophet ﷺ in many hadith about this stuff. So this is another situation where some forgetfulnesses are not excused. As far as coercion is in focus, for there to be a true case of coercion, 4 components must be present. Put on your fiqh jurisprudence hat for a second, because this gets a little bit, fiqhi. So we have 4 components. Component number 1 is the person who is doing the coercing, the mukrih, the evil guy who's forcing them. Not necessarily evil, sometimes it's the judge. But most of the time it's an evil person forcing the other person. This is party number 1. Party number 2 is the person who is getting coerced, the one whose arm is getting twisted. 3 is, what is the coercion? Like, what is the threat of the one doing the coercion? Al-mukrah bihi. What did he threaten him? I'm going to slap you. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to what? So the threat has a value. And finally, the act that the one is being required to do, the one whose arm is getting twisted, what is he required to be doing? So all of those 4 have to be there in order that we have an actual scenario of coercion. So this is actually, it's very extensive. As I said, there's 70 pages in the books, and it goes into fiqh details and so on. So I'm not going to go into this, and it's impossible to summarize it. I just wanted to give you a general sense of where this is going. So the most important condition concerning the one doing the coercing is that he has to have the ability to carry out what he's threatening. So if he said, listen, I'm going to hit you with a bat, and he has a bat in his hand, chances are he might do it if he's mentally unstable, or if he's angry enough. But if he mentions that he threatens him with something that he cannot even exercise, for example, I'm going to take all your money from your bank. Okay, he cannot do that. So that's not considered to be a valid threat. So not all threats are equal. So actually, it is sufficient for the coerced to believe with reason that the one doing the coercion has such the ability to actually do what he is threatening to do. If the coercing person actually has no ability or cannot reasonably be believed to be able to carry out the threat, then it cannot be considered a coercion. And hence, if the coerced person does what he's asked and he believes that it cannot be done, that's on him, because this is no real coercion in this situation. There is also a difference of opinion concerning exactly what determines a threat and what are the different types of threats. Each school of fiqh has its own interpretation and guideline. This is a whole different, differences of opinion. And I think the last slide, in general, the threat must be of such great harm that it makes the coerced person afraid enough to perform the coerced act in order to rescue himself from the situation he is facing. It has to be, a serious threat. It cannot be a simple threat. The acts that one may be coerced into performing are divided into three categories. Actions that are forbidden to perform even under coercion. Someone is forcing another person to kill a third person, or God forbid, to rape someone. No matter what, you can't do it. No coercion will allow you to go and cross that line. You are not of more value than the victim that you are going to be inflicting that haram on, killing or raping or doing whatever. So you have to take in the harm and the threat, and you're not allowed to cross over. So coercion does not work in here. So again, just because it's much more clear, there's a person who's being coerced to kill another person. He cannot save himself by killing that person. That person's life is not less valuable than yours. So you don't have you become a killer by killing that person, and you will be punished. And this is not under this hadith. Acts that are required to perform while under coercion. So there are acts that you are required to perform. If somebody forces you, I'm going to kill you unless you drink wine, unless you have alcohol, all right? Okay, no, you must do it. You cannot go and destroy your life because you don't want to drink alcohol. No, they have to have some sort of balance. And finally, acts that are allowed to perform under coercion, although it is considered better and more virtuous for the person to abstain from them. As what happened with Sayyidina Ammar bin Yasir, for example, he was forced to utter a word of evil against the Prophet ﷺ, and he did. But if someone else, as we know, there's many stories where they were forced to say something bad or something that the ruler wanted them to hear, and they refused to give him that, and they were killed. Sa'id ibn Jubair and so many other different scholars and notable people, they could have said the word that they were forced into, but because they were regarded, because they had this strength, they decided that no, they're not going to say that word, and they got harmed for it.
For example, gun to your head.
Someone
comes up to you, he has a gun to your head, and tells you say this word
yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is what happened to Sayyidina Ammar. And the Prophet ﷺ guided him. He said that if they force you to say the word of kufr, you could say it, because even in the Quran, it excuses Sayyidina Ammar and excuses people who have been coerced and forced to say the word of kufr. Because إِلَّا مَنْ أُكْرِهَ وَقَلْبُهُ مُطْمَئِنٌ بِالْإِيمَانِ. As long as the person's heart did not change, then whatever his tongue utters under force and coercion doesn't count.
So what if you're like, yeah, so you have the gun to your head, but you're just like, I'm not gonna say it, and then he shoots you.
That's fine. That's okay. That's fine. But and don't forget, like this, sometimes it's different between people who are regarded and common people. For example, Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, he was flogged. Is that like he was hit with lashes and he was beaten up. He was required, asked to say a word that he refused to say, and he went into prison because of it. He could have said it and saved himself, but because he was an exemplary person, and they told him like there's hundreds and thousands of people outside waiting to see what Imam Ahmad was going to do. If he did say that word, then they will all go do the same thing, and he did not say it, and that's why. But other people who has no followers, he might as well have saved himself being beaten and imprisoned. So it depends on the person. So we're almost there. And that's it. We're right on time. Jazakumullah khair. We'll give a chance for the people to come in and pray. So as I said, inshallah, in the beginning, we have one more halqa, inshallah, maybe two. And I'll keep you posted, inshallah. There's 3 more hadith and we'll be done. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi.